Hey everybody, so for this last bit then on internal audit, we're going to have a look at the reports. So kind of like their outputs, they do all this work on the systems, etc. And they're going to create a report. Now, that report could be asked in the exam about the structure of it or the principles of it. And the principles would be that make sure the report must answer the objectives. Okay, why were you asked to look at the sales system? So it must answer the objectives. It must be understandable. And to be understandable, you have to think about who is it going to? Do these people understand the terminology? Is it going internally to the internal department? Is it going to the board, etc.? And it also must be concise. Okay, it should show the work that you've done and the methodology that you used, and then also show your findings and your recommendations, okay, but also it should also show the added value. Try and quantify the value of the work, because it's very easy, isn't it, for a marketing department to say, well, we spent X amount of pounds and we got 10 billion back. Very difficult for internal audit. So they do the reports, they follow all these things, and then say at the end they ought to say, right, by doing this you will save 100,000 a year or whatever. So try and quantify that added value. Okay, so let's get on to the structure of it then. First of all, there's going to be a cover to the report, and on that cover will obviously be the subject matter, what it's all about, to whom, the addressee and the date, okay, and also importantly the rating. So you're rating how good the sales system is, however that rating might work. Then you are going to put next an executive summary, a summary for your executive directors. That's just basically something very concise, and it means, look, you don't have to read this whole report if you don't want to. This is our very concise, very short summary of the whole thing. Then you want to go into, again keeping it concise, the key findings. Okay, the key findings, the key recommendations. All right, and that will look at things like what the main problems were, any regulations broken, so any regulations breached, and finally, again, obviously, any recommendations. But just key ones, just nice and brief and simple, because then you would go into the detail. Okay, the detail findings. Okay, and in those detailed findings, apart from talking about the work you did, the problems you found, the recommendations, also talk about the implementation. Particularly how and at what time the recommendations could be implemented. And again, at the end, some assessment, grading, and reasons why you've given it that grading. Okay, so they're the things to remember. And finally, I just wanted to do versus external audit. So internal versus external. So we've got internal here, external here. Okay, and it's very, very simple, very straightforward. First of all, is it legally required? Internal, no, it's not. It might be a good thing to do according to corporate governance, but it's not legally required. Externally it is, an external audit is if it's a large company. Okay, so there's one difference. Then you think, right, who appoints? So appointed by, when it's internal, appointed by management. Ideally, it's the audit committee, but it could be by management. Externally, external auditors are appointed by shareholders. Who do they report to? Internally, they report to the management. Ideally, an audit committee, ultimately to management. Who do external auditors report to? Shareholders. And then finally, what do they report on? Okay, internally, they report on systems, they report on controls, they report on compliance with regulations. Externally, all they report on are the financial statements. They give an opinion as to the truth and fairness of the financial statements. Now, they will use the systems, controls, and compliance. They will look to see how they are used to make up the figures in the financial statements, but they only report on the financial statements. So try and learn those four differences, and you'll be away.